There are two stories in the news today, neither of which I think warrant actually being called stories. They're non-events, as it were. Being reported on, I believe, to stir up division and hatred because God knows that's what the world needs more of. The first comes from here in the UK, and the one thing I care less about than football is women's football. The sport I'm referring to is what Americans and Australians call soccer and the rest of the world call football. And I can't stand the men's game, so watching women play it much slower does nothing for me whatsoever. However, the Arsenal women's team have found themselves in the news in a story which has been described as shocking and frightening. The issue is that on the Arsenal women's squad, all of the players are white. Predictably, every woke lefty is screaming racism. However, although football has had a problem with racism, mostly from the fans, not the players, maybe, just maybe, the reason that those women are on the Arsenal women's team is because, and bear with me on this, could it be they're the best women in the area at playing football? Because when it comes to the men's game, and bear in mind that Britain is 82% white, people of colour are massively overrepresented in the men's game. And not only on the field, also with commentators, even in the adverts at half time. Because in the UK now, you won't see an advert featuring two white men unless it's heavily implied that they're fucking each other. There's no nice way of putting this, and as a white guy I feel a bit nervous saying this out loud, but I've noticed it's only countries with a predominantly white population that ever get called out for diversity, and of course representation and inclusivity are incredibly important, but when it's just for the sake of box ticking. Because the people bemoaning that the Arsenal women's team are all white, are they also complaining that Pakistan's cricket team is made up entirely of brown men? For me, the question shouldn't be, why is it that the Arsenal women's team are all white? It should be, why is it that women of colour, as it were, aren't interested in playing football? After all, we've all seen Bend It Like Beckham. I'm sure some people think it's a fucking documentary. To me, this story is nothing more than a crude attempt to stir up a bit of racial tension because, you know, there hasn't been enough of that recently. And, of course, it's not only in sport. If we look at TV shows, anything made in the UK or the USA is a box-ticking exercise, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Yet, if we think of a TV show like Squid Game, only one character in the entire show wasn't Korean. But the show didn't suffer for it whatsoever. In fact, if I'm talking about representation, you won't see someone like me in any Hollywood blockbusters. A bald, middle-aged man with a beard. In fact, the only role I could get in Hollywood would be anonymous henchman. I'd be on screen 30 seconds, then get shot on the head by John Wick. In a separate story in the USA, the American writer and race hustler Robin DiAngelo, author of White Fragility, a book that asks the question, why are white people so awkward when it comes to talking about race? And as a middle-aged white guy, I can reply to that. It's because only people this colour can be labelled as racist and there be no comeback on those making the accusations, which in my mind is somewhat racist. Anyway, in a desperate attempt to sell more of her books, DiAngelo has pointed out there's a tool of white supremacy being used to brainwash children, and it has been used for the last 10 years, hiding, as it were, in plain sight. The 2013 Disney film Frozen. According to DiAngelo, children as young as 3 are being indoctrinated through the movie Frozen into thinking that white is the only acceptable race. That Elsa, with her blue eyes and blonde hair, is essentially promoting the Aryan master race. And in the original film, Frozen, all of the human characters are white. That's fair enough. And historically, Disney has been very white, like the rest of Hollywood was. But before Frozen was released, there was The Princess and the Frog, Pocahontas, Mulan, Aladdin. Some of those films don't feature any white characters. So how does the argument stand up? And of course, in Frozen 2, that was released in 2019, after the woke mind virus had hit all of us, that cast, as it were, of animated characters is much more diverse. Why is it, though, that in Frozen, all of the human characters are Caucasian? Is it more likely that Disney were covertly trying to recruit children into the KKK, or were they just trying to make a shitload of money? Because Frozen is based on the Hans Christian Andersen story, The Snow Queen. Now, Andersen was Danish, and the story The Snow Queen is set in 18th century Norway. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that 300 years ago, Scandinavia wasn't overly diverse. Not only that, but in the Second World War, when Norway was under Nazi occupation, thousands of Norwegian men joined the Waffen SS. I'm guessing the idea of racial harmony is very new in that part of the world. The first time I saw Frozen, part of me was wondering if, at some point in the film, Anna and Elsa were going to les off. Although it did occur to me that they're sisters, and also that sort of thing doesn't happen in Disney movies. I guarantee there's a porn version of it out there somewhere on the internet. My point is, though, that historically, if you're looking for people with blue eyes and blonde hair, Scandinavia is a fucking good place to start looking. Thus far, I've not been to Norway, although I plan to in the future. The closest I've been is Sweden, and although Sweden is much more diverse than it used to be, when I was there, because although I'm a white guy, I'm quite dark for a white guy, some of the native Swedes thought I was from Tunisia. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being from Tunisia, it's just that my family, historically, came from fucking Sweden. Do I look more Scandinavian or like I come from Africa? Not only that, but if Frozen was actually a tool of white supremacy, something that the far right were using to stir up racial hatred and promote the idea of a master race, then why would they cast Idina Menzel as the voice of Elsa? Menzel is Jewish! Like I said, I don't think either of these are really stories. Robin DiAngelo, she's just trying to stir up a bit of tension because she's a hustler, she's a race grifter, that's what she does. And as for the journalists writing about the Arsenal women's team, well, for God's sake, it's 2023. Just be grateful none of them have dicks. As ever, thanks for watching. The American writer and Robin DiAngelo are in the new, and now I'll fucking wank that up, then I supremacy, the 2013 Disney film Frozen. And I'm going to have Let It Go in my head all fucking afternoon. Fuck it, football, and that's women's football. Although, the first football match I've watched in its entirety in the last 10 years was the Women's World Cup final. And England lost. All of the characters are... No, they're not. No, Olaf. No, he's made of snow. He is white. The thing that they missed in Frozen. Make a big deal that Elsa can create things from ice, but she also created Olaf. She called life into being. I fucked that up as well. And there's mud everywhere. The first time...